Dandy Cook, and I am so excited to be with you at New Providence. Great music this morning, and I've grown to love your staff in a very short period of time. You got a great thing going on in Smar, Georgia. I may be the only one here, but I've never even been down Rumble Road before, you know. You pass it 1,000 times a year, it seems like, on the interstate, but anyway, it's great to be here and see what's going on here, and it's so exciting to just check out what God's doing here, because God is obviously at work here. So thank you for joining us. Now here's what we're going to do today. I take people to Israel on a full-time basis. Sometimes we get on a plane and go there. Most of the time we do what we're going to do this morning. We kind of have a virtual experience. And we go to a Bible site, and the rabbis would say it this way: you learn with your feet. And so we're going to see if we can learn something about some familiar passages today by simply seeing the images of the land. It's not our backyard. A lot of times, we kind of just skip right over the location of sites. But many times those locations change the impact of the story, change the way we should be reading it. So this morning we're going to be in Matthew chapter 16. If you have a Bible, you want to grab this passage for a minute, and I think it's a familiar passage, and we're going to actually go to the gates of Hades. I'll show you the gates of Hades today, where Jesus says, "On this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against us." Tonight at 6 o'clock we're going to come back, and we're going to have an early look at Christmas. Now that I am so fired up about this particular presentation tonight, because one of our application points says, with many of us seeing so many members of our family this week, being Thanksgiving, we actually have a chance to do something a little different together as a family unit at Christmas because of what you'll see different about the Christmas story tonight. Now, I'm going to take you to the Christmas story, and more than likely, I have found, I don't know that I've ever found anyone, myself included, who without seeing the land actually saw this part of the Christmas story. And yet it's the very first thing Luke told us about. The very first thing Matthew told us about was this particular element of the Christmas story. I hope you'll join us again tonight, and we'll walk through the Christmas story together, and you may never honestly see Christmas the same way again. Now, we have a couple of resources for you. One is, if you got one of the bulletins, you should have gotten a handout that looks like this. And here's what you do with this. There's a little tear-off flap on the bottom of this thing, and you just tear it off just like that. If you give me your name and email address, we will send you 5 days a week a photograph like this one, from Israel, and we'll tell you a little bit about it. Now, why do we do that? Well, when people go to Israel, if you are familiar with somebody who's been to Israel, you know that they come back, they talk about it like it was the greatest trip of their life. They say things like, "I'll never read the Bible the same way again." One of the things I hear about Israel, about when people come back, is there was so much information they cannot possibly comprehend it. It's kind of like, we're in this we're drinking from a waterfall concept. And so we found that if people have one photograph a day, and it's amazing what happens if a month or two goes by or a year goes by, the information the land can teach us about the Bible. So that's available for you. All you got to do is put that in like an offering plate, maybe later on, or just bring it to me, and we'll get you on the email list. Now, another thing, there's a big display right back here. It's kind of impossible to miss about Israel. It's got a picture of the Sea of Galilee up there. If you are interested in going to Israel, I've got 3 trips next year. I got 3 trips. One is sold out. The June hiking trip is sold out. We have a spring trip. We actually are going to be in Israel on Easter Sunday. We'll be in Jerusalem on Easter Sunday. I've never been there on Easter Sunday, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's kind of like going to a very popular event somewhere. It could be very memorable. It might just be crowded. I don't know. But we're going to be there, and that's a non-hiking trip. We call them traditional trips. And the September trip has just opened up, and we have plenty of room in it. It's a hiking trip. It's an easy difference between a hiking trip and a traditional trip. Think Masada, which is a mountain. Hikers hike. Traditionals ride the tram. So if you're a tram person or a hiking person, take your pick. Now, to answer your question right off the bat, the most common question I get, is it safe? Of course not. It's not safe to go to school. It's not safe to go to the grocery store. I was coming to church today, and on the interstate, the state of Georgia put up a sign that told me 1,300 people have died this year on the highway system of Georgia, and here I am taking that risk going to church. No, it's not safe. As a matter of fact, most of the people who travel with me to Israel have to go through Macon, Georgia, just to get to Atlanta. It's not safe. It's not safe. Here's the sermon before the sermon. Don't ever let fear make decisions about your future. If you let fear make decisions about your future, you will not like the future it brings to you. That goes for life. If you want to go to Israel, come on and go to Israel. I wouldn't take you if I didn't feel like it was going to be safe. I wouldn't have taken my wife, my 3 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws. Only 2 of them are married. I even took son-in-law number 1 while our daughter, his wife, was like at 7 months pregnant, And I said, I'll bring him back. I'll bring him back better. And I don't know about the better, but I did bring him back. If you are looking for a way to bless somebody in your life and you don't want to go to Israel, or you're just not up to the travel, but you've got the financial resources, I can help you connect with like a scholarship issue. What a great Christmas gift, a trip to Israel, especially for a young person and somebody in the ministry, somebody thinking about going to ministry. If you're kind of attached to them and have the financial resources, if you'll give me half the money, I will leave that person there. And that way, you'll both be blessed. So I should probably stop and just read the scripture. So let's first of all read Matthew 16. I'm going to start in verse 13. It's a very familiar passage. It says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you? He asked. Who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And we're going to stop there. There's more to the passage. There's always more to the passage, more to the story. But we're going to stop there. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have ever heard that passage before? Practically everybody in the room. How many of you have been to the gates of Hades? 1 or 2? Good. All right, so here we are. That's why I am here today. That's why my ministry exists. Only 1% of the people in a church, typically, have ever been to Israel. Only 10% of the pastors. And yet, some of the greatest lessons to understanding the Bible are right there, laid out. I like to call them secrets hidden in plain sight. And yes, we would like to get more people to Israel, but there's no way. But I got a 99% market out there that if we can figure out how to bring those lessons to them, that's what we're going to do. And that's what my ministry is about. And I just thank you so much for allowing me to take you to Israel today. And we're going to take a direct flight from Smar, Georgia to Tel Aviv. When's the last time you've done that, huh? Now, one of the things I would like you to notice as we go through these Google Earth videos and then the videos of the land is our country has lots of water. We're in a drought. They keep telling us we're in a drought, but nobody woke up this morning thinking, where am I going to find water today? You get to the Middle East, North Africa. Water is obviously a big challenge for people. And today, as we follow the path of the Jordan River, we are going to be talking about water from this moment to the very end of this message. So don't forget that. We're going to follow that theme. Now, Jesus moved from Nazareth to Capernaum. It wasn't really his choice, He moved there because the people in Nazareth didn't like the sermon he had. And I'm not getting... Would you help me get to the next slide there? Because this one just doesn't want to go. I tell people it's a female phone. Sometimes it doesn't work, and I don't know why. So we just don't understand each other. It's a communication issue. I have 3 daughters and a wife. I earned the right to say that, all right? So the Sea of Galilee is where he moves, right up to the north end of the Sea of Galilee. Capernaum is part of the Bible Belt of the north side of the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is only a lake. It's not an ocean. It's a lake. It's a beautiful lake. 13 miles wide, 13 miles long, 7 miles wide at its widest. You've got an opportunity, anytime you're on the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, you can always see the other shoreline. It's a lot smaller than people think. The synagogue that you'll find in Capernaum today is built on top of the synagogue that Jesus knew. So if you look underneath these white stones, you'll find the black basalt stone of the synagogue that Jesus knew. Maybe it wasn't as elaborate as this one. Maybe it was just as elaborate. I don't know. An earthquake knocked that one down, and so they built this one about 300 years after Jesus lived. But this synagogue is very, very elaborate, very large, and it's very typical of all those little communities all along the north end of the Sea of Galilee. I like to call it the Bible Belt. So you get Magdala, Capernaum, Chorazin, Bethsaida, a lot of familiar names up there, where everybody goes to synagogue on Shabbat, on Sabbath. Everybody obeys Torah, memorizes Torah, loves God with all their heart. They spend their early years in a place like this. This is the yeshiva. It's attached to the synagogue. It's a school. So the girls and the boys go to school. At some point, the girls are done and the boys go on if they have the academic means. The brightest of the boys go on to another level. The brightest of the boys go on to another level. It's kind of like picture sports in our system of doing school. Some of the kids are going to get involved in athletics early on, like a lot. Everybody plays soccer when they're 4, 5, 6 years old now, it seems like, But by the time you get to high school, if you're dealing with football, you've only got a few that are playing, and only a few of those are getting the attention of the colleges. So think in academics, that's what's going on in Capernaum with young men who were thinking about becoming a rabbi, because becoming a rabbi would be like becoming an NFL player. Obviously they're not going to hit anybody, but it's very, very, they'd be very famous, and their families would be very, very proud of them, and they would have quite a career in front of them. But if you finally get to that top level and nobody else in your town is just as academically sharp, nobody's memorized as much scripture as you, then you would go to a rabbi you wanted to follow and you would say, "Rabbi, may I please follow you?" The rabbi would almost certainly turn around and say, "Well, yes, for a few days, let's check this out." And so they would walk for a few days. The rabbi would test the young student, would test the potential disciple, and ask him all kinds of questions. And depending on how he answers the questions, at the end of the testing period, however many hours or days that goes, the rabbi would turn and say, "Yes, you may follow me. You're now one of my disciples." Or more than likely, he would say, "As your other classmates have done, even though you're a bright young man, and I love the way you've studied Torah, I love your passion for the Lord, no, you can't follow me. It's time for you to go back and help your father and whatever your family's trade is." Almost nobody made the cut. I want you to think about how Jesus, as he comes to this neighborhood, instead of being asked, he does the asking to people who were already working with their fathers. He got the B team to follow him. He went after people who had already missed the cut. And I don't know if that makes you feel any better, but it makes me feel real good that Jesus loves B-teamers, because here I am, the B-teamer. And he said, "Come, follow me." And so they did. And that wasn't the only time he ever said, "Come, follow me." The first time he said, "Come, follow me," it was an invitation. The next time, it's not an invitation, it's a command. Because if you're going to follow your rabbi, whatever he does, you do. You don't get an option of saying, "I don't know if I really want to do that," or "That frightens me." In fact, the Jewish way of looking at the story, when Jesus is out here one day and he's walking on the water, and Simon says, "If that's you, seriously, I'd like to walk on the water too." And he gets out of the boat, and then we all kind of laugh at Simon because he sinks, and Jesus has to rescue him, and he gets onto him. The Jewish way of looking at that story is, what is wrong with those other 11 disciples? Your rabbi's walking on the water. Why aren't you walking on the water? Why didn't everybody get out of the boat? Well, they have quite the encounter all around this area. In fact, we're looking right now at 80% of the recorded ministry of Jesus. It happened right around the northern end of the Sea of Galilee. I'm serious. It's the Bible Belt. If you were to go over on the other side of the lake, you would find pagan communities where everything that's forbidden in Torah is celebrated. Well, one day, Jesus goes over in the area of Bethsaida and he feeds, this is the second time he has done this, he feeds a crowd like 4,000 men, plus the women and children. He has worked for days healing, teaching. He is exhausted. He is totally given out, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so he goes back over toward Magdala, and just a little bit south of there, we believe in a place called Dalmanutha. He gets out of the boat, and he's still tired. And I don't know how you feel when you're tired, but I can really relate to that often, you know. You get a little, you want people to kind of work with you when you're tired. And he gets out, and there are a couple of Pharisees who come up and say, Jesus, we'd like to believe too. Show us a sign. Do a trick. Fetch, Jesus. You know, this is the Son of God. They may not believe that. They obviously don't buy into that yet. But you don't tell somebody like this to do a trick just so you can believe in your personal little party of two. He has already done more than enough to show this entire community that he is who he says he is. And so he says to his disciples, come, follow me. And they get in the boat and they go back over toward Bethsaida because that's where the river is. And they follow the river up to its beginning point, So that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the steps. They're going to go to Caesarea Philippi. Now they have to follow the river. Remember, this is a land where water is very, very important, and they're walking everywhere they go. It's going to take them 2 days to get to Caesarea Philippi. And so they go by way of the Jordan River, and this is the Jordan River. People are usually disappointed when they see the Jordan River for the first time. It's not very big. It's like a creek. People from Texas are especially disappointed in the size of the Jordan River. You know, they're all about big, and the Jordan River is just not very big. In fact, this was after the winter rains. The water was really flowing well. They go up the Hula Valley. They hang close to the river all the way up there. And then as they get close to Mount Hermon, they'll see the tallest mountain in Israel way, way up in the north. And they know, or they don't know where they're going. They're just following Jesus. But Caesarea Philippi and the beginning of the Jordan River will happen at the same place right there at the base of Mount Hermon. Now, their landmark is Amrit. That's how they know that the road is turning. It actually turns here to go to Damascus, which isn't very far away. This would be the same route that the Apostle Paul would take before he was the Apostle Paul, when he was going to persecute the Christians. But here at Amrit, in a little, this was found not very long ago. In fact, there was a brush fire there in 1998 or 99, and it reminded the archaeologists there were some unusual shaped stones up here. And so then they came back, they had the money for it, and they began to dig around, and they uncovered a temple made of white Jerusalem stone in a land of black basalt rock. Somebody carried these stones all the way from the area of Jerusalem, which is 100 miles away, and they don't have heavy trucks. They don't have any kind of helicopters to get this stuff up. They went to a lot of trouble, and it's hard for us to imagine the beauty and the grandeur of these columns, but they would have been plastered together. They would have been painted white, or I guess the stone would have been the color of it. But this was a gleaming white temple on a hill that served as the landmark at this major intersection. People could see it for miles. This temple at Amrit, as they call it, is a temple built to honor Caesar Augustus, the one of the Christmas story, as the God-man, as one of the sons of the gods. I used to wonder, if you're the emperor, you've got to know you're not divine. I mean, Julius Caesar, Augustus, Vespasian, and Nero, all those emperors, they were all considered to be the son of the gods. They were partly divine, and people literally worship them. But you've got to know, deep inside Caesar Augustus, you're not the son of the gods. You're not divine. I mean, you get a cold, you got to go to the doctor just like everybody else. But you know, I was reading Julius Caesar's biography just as part of the background research. I love history, and he did a funeral eulogy for an aunt that died, and in the eulogy, and one of the reasons we know this is the text was preserved, he gives his family tree. And somewhere not very far up the tree, he told about the gods who came down and became part of his ancestry. He honestly believed he was divine. It's crazy. Now, people would come to these temples over the next century, the ones who had decided to follow Jesus. And these temples are all over the place in the Roman Empire. So you go to Turkey, you'll find them. You go, to Greece and into Italy. And this may have been, in fact, they tell us it's one of the first 3 built anywhere in the world, in the land of the Bible, in the land of a jealous God who will have no other gods before me. Here's a temple that says Augustus is God. There would be, as this movement of Jesus takes off after the resurrection, there would be seasons of time where people had to come to a temple like this, wherever they lived, and they had to offer some incense. They would buy it. It was really just a tax. But they had to buy the incense, and they had to take it in, and they had to put it on an altar. And the penalty for not doing this could have ranged from maybe just a fine you had to pay. Maybe nobody would do business with you. But there was also a season of time under some of those emperors who said, I will be worshipped as God, as Lord, or you will pay with your life for that sacrifice. So why did so many Christians give up their lives? Because they understood something that I don't think we ever get in our culture. If you call Caesar Lord, nobody else gets that title. If you call Jesus Lord, nobody else gets that title. Only one person can be Lord. Closest I can get to it, we do understand that if you get married, you just said no to all the other potential candidates. Oh, I don't know about your life. Maybe they all said no to you. But, when you take a spouse, all others no one else can be called your spouse. They understood nobody else can be called Lord. Now, here's the deal. The reason I threw these images in, I wanted you to see something. In fact, I think we're really pretty privileged. If you went to Israel before 2007, 2008, you couldn't get there. As a matter of fact, the only way you can get there now is to be on a hiking expedition and to know how to get there. And you have to walk past, you have to go past some fence and cross the stream, and it's kind of a little bit of a hike to get up there. And the last fence, they left all the landmine signs on it. Danger landmines, it's all the way around there. We were doing, in fact, the filming for this project back in 2012, and my youngest photographer, I didn't even see the landmine signs. They're all over the place in this part of Israel, and I'd already been up there once, and so I said, just film me as I'm walking up there, and I just go walking across the grass. I even got off the path, and our guide was there, and our photographers went up, but one of my photographers stayed back, and I thought, wow, what's he taking so long for? And we looked at him, we were waving at him, come up, and he was a long ways away, and he was pointing to the fence, and he was looking at the landmine signs, danger, landmines. And the guide we were with shouts to him and said, don't worry, they are Lebanese landmines, they never work. And so he joined us. But anyway, my point is, you happen to live in an age when archaeologists are spending millions of dollars to pull out new insight to stories like this in the Bible, and also evidence that what we read in the Bible is literally true. I've been using Google Earth here, and we're going to use a little bit more in a minute. I want to tell you something, just a quick, incredible little tidbit. I can't use Google Earth with any other religious book. Because all the other religious books either have nothing in there mentioning geography, it's just do's and don'ts and poetry, or they made it up. I can't use Google Earth with Harry Potter, and I can't use it with the Book of Mormon. And that may be politically incorrect, but I want to tell you something. The truth is important, and you ought to know that. Well, let's go on up to Caesarea Philippi. 3 miles away from this temple, as all these young disciples, and they're the age of teenagers, they're walking behind Jesus. They're seeing this temple to Caesar Augustus, wondering, well, who in the world am I walking behind? If that's supposed to be the son of the gods, I'm walking behind a guy who's walking on water. He's stopping storms at sea. He's multiplying food. He's healing blind people and lepers. It's amazing. Who am I with? Perfect way for Jesus to set up the question in a moment, well, what are they saying about me? And who do you say that I am? And that's exactly where they're going. They're going toward those two questions, the two most important questions I think they will ever hear. At the base of Mount Hermon is Banyas, and Banyas was known in those days as Caesarea Philippi. A man named Philip renamed it in honor of the emperor or Caesar. And the thing about the River Jordan right here is that it just starts. It's big, it's wide, and it just right there at the base of the cliff, it just starts. And you don't see many rivers do this. Most of them are streams, two streams come together, they make 24 streams coming together, and then finally you got enough streams and it looks like a river, and they say, well, here's the beginning of the river. The Mississippi does that. Not the Jordan River. It just starts right here at the base of the mountain. It was even wilder when Jesus and the disciples got here, because as this cave comes up that you're going to see right here, that cave used to be a lot bigger, and the water came out of the cave. An earthquake on New Year's Day in 1837 collapsed the cave, and so it's no longer as impressive as it was. But that cave is the center part of this story, and there's the river coming out of it. And the people of ancient cultures saw this mystery, this dark hole, this life-giving water coming out of it. It was amazing, and so they made this place a place of worship, and all of their little niches, the leftover parts of their temples are left here. The number one worship in this place was the worship of Pan. This was part of his area right here. Pan, half goat, half man, all evil. The sexual stuff that happened up here on the platform of the worship thing, and then the killing of goats first and later on children, infants, made this the most evil corner in Israel. And picture this at night, pitch black dark, maybe a full moon, maybe it was just all black, fire, drums. Somebody's going to die here. They're screaming. Every time you use the word panic, you're remembering how people felt when they stumbled up on the worship of Pan, or pandemonium, or pandemic. It was terrifying. This is a place of your nightmares. And Jesus took his disciples here. This is really different. And that hole in the ground, they developed a story that said the gods, like Baal and Asherah, the ones that Elijah fought on top of Mount Carmel, the gods would go underground every winter. That's why they said things died. And you had to get them to come out in the spring if you were going to have crops or new animals, or you and your wife wanted to have babies. And so you got to entice them to come out of that cave. Why? Because they said that's the entranceway to the underworld. They called that cave the gates of Hades. There's another gates of Hades in Turkey. It's just a mysterious hole in the ground. It's got a poisonous gas because of whatever minerals under there. The priest of that area, the pagan priests, learned that they could not only hold their breath, if they went on deep into the cave, there was an air pocket where they had fresh air, and so they could climb up and breathe, and they could wait there for a little while, longer than anybody could hold his breath. And they would carry some chickens in there, or sheep, or whatever people brought. And then finally they'd hold their breath again, and they'd drop back down, and they'd walk out, and all the animals would be dead, and the priest would be alive, and people go, oh, you're incredible. And it was just kind of a racket. But they also called that hole the gates of Hades. Any mysterious hole in the ground, the pagan religion started connecting what I would say would be demonic worship elements with it. And it's twisting. I mean, think about the good gift God has given this country, this area with this river. Everybody else is desert. Israel gets water. This is the difference between death and desert or life and water. And they twisted it so that it's coming out of hell. And then, they give it to the demonic gods. It's just, I'm telling you, it was a place of your nightmare. And it's here where Jesus turns around to these young men, all of them high school age, we would say, and he says, well, what are they saying about me? As they give him great answers, John the Baptist, he's already been executed. But there's rumors that he's back to life and living through Jesus. That's one of Herod's son's fears. And Jeremiah and Elijah, great compliment for Jesus. But when he says, well, what about you? It's Simon who steps across the line, and for the first time in history, somebody says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're right, Jesus said. And here's what we're going to do. And they're standing on this rock, and they're looking at the world's biggest rock, and it's just rock everywhere. He says, I'm going to call you Rocky. That's what the name Peter means, Cephas, rock. So I'm going to give you a new name. I'm going to call you Peter. And from this point on, even though in the gospel Simon Peter's referred to all the way through as Simon Peter, but that's because everybody had gotten used to calling him that. But, I'm going to give you a new name. I'm going to call you Rocky, Simon Peter. And then Jesus says, and on this rock, I'll build my church. And the gates of Hades will not prevail against us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at 3 interpretations of what this means, real quick. One, if you grew up in a Catholic home, if you have Catholic friends, if you're just kind of familiar with the way church does church, you know that the Catholic Church says this is why we have a pope. And that certainly is why every pope gets a new name, because Jesus gave Simon a new name that day. If you watched the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, the Roman Catholic Church had a nice commercial, and they referred to this passage, talking about, that's where the Pope came from. Now, Protestants, and we would fit into the area of being Protestants. Protestants say, well, it's what he said that was important. It's the confession of faith. When we want people to say out loud, Jesus is my Lord. He is my Lord and Savior. That is extremely important. And so that's why one day I walked down in front of my church. That's certainly why I got baptized. Maybe you've been baptized. That's part of the confession of faith. But I'd like to introduce a third concept here that maybe is more in line with what Jesus was trying to communicate. Because I guarantee you one thing, he was not suggesting to these disciples that they needed a new fellowship hall on this location. He was not in a building program. And the word church is so awkwardly translated, it's better translated movement. So listen to it like this. Guys, I know you didn't ever think you would come to Caesarea Philippi. I know if we had asked your families, especially those of you who are still so young, your parents would have had to write us a permission slip. They wouldn't have given it to us. I know you didn't expect us to come up here. I also know they didn't expect to see a rabbi. They haven't seen a rabbi up here in who knows how long. But we are here. And the reason we came here is I wanted you to know something. Everything we've been doing down there in the Bible Belt, where it's safe, we're going to bring that movement to places like this. And we're going to change the world. And if that frightens you, if it doesn't frighten you, you have not yet understood what Jesus is asking you to do. If that frightens you, I want you to understand something. The gates of Hades will not prevail against us. All this stuff is nonsense. It's crazy. So, here we have, in our culture, Sunday morning, people gather together in a... I like this building. I like this building a lot, especially for where I'm going with this. So, we have this question as American culture Christians. Is this following Jesus all about coming in rooms like this and buildings like this and in programs like these so that we can get enough Christian friends so that we never have to have any non-Christian friends? Is it so that we can come in here and we can sing our songs and not ever worry about the other songs, and we have our entertainment and don't have to worry about the other entertainment? Are we indeed hiding from our culture in rooms like this? If we are, we have missed what Jesus was asking us to do. How plainly did he have to say things like, I was in prison and you came to visit me. I was hungry. I didn't have any clothes, but you fed me. You gave me clothes. You came to see me when I was sick. And everybody that did that says, Lord, we never saw you in all those places. What are you talking about? And said, whenever you did it to the least one of these, you were, in fact, doing it for me. I don't want you to hide from your culture. I want you to go out there and change the culture. And I don't know about you, but from my observation point, we desperately need our culture to change. And the only thing that's going to work, it's not changing political parties in Washington, D.C. The only thing that's going to work is if the people around us and the people in America and the people all around the world find out that Jesus Christ is changing lives even today. And he's asking you and me to do it. Well, let me wrap this up. We're going to come back tonight and do the Christmas story, and it's got some more incredible, to me, just incredible insight just to see the land of the story. But I want you to picture something. The water coming out of this cave had for so long been connected with the demonic stuff, the stories, of the underworld of Baal and Asherah, then the pan god, and it was so much so that the Jewish people, like around the Sea of Galilee, they didn't go swimming. It is possible, maybe even likely, that the fishermen who would take their lives at risk and get out there in those boats in a place that could erupt in a storm like that, they might not have known how to swim because they don't do water sports. And the water is kind of spooky. In fact, if you read in Luke's gospel, you'll notice one time, instead of calling it the Sea of Galilee, he calls it the abyss. The abyss. They crossed the abyss. I believe that's when they were going to see the Gerasene demoniac. That's the kind of thing that happened when you cross the abyss. And go to the pagan side. They expected crazy men in the cemeteries to come out and attack them. They didn't want. They wanted to hide in the Bible Belt. Jesus intentionally took them over there. And then the guy changed. That's where all the life change stories are. That's where it's exciting. Well, anyway, that water carried with it an element of the demonic, so that if let's say your father or your husband or your brother, whoever it is out there fishing on the Sea of Galilee, and one day you get this horrible news. There was one of those storms, you saw it, and when the boat straggles back in, they barely can get it back in. One of the men's missing, and it's your loved one. He has drowned out there. That's going to be horrible. I don't get to see the body. What are we going to do about a funeral? We don't have a grave to go to, and the financial security. And besides, I loved him, and you have all these grief points. And plus, when the sun goes down and you're trying to go to sleep, I don't care how much it's just superstition and you don't believe that stuff. But he died in the abyss. The devil reached up and got him and pulled him down. What did he do that was so wrong that he died like that? I mean, that's the way they felt about the water. They would never admit it, probably. They're too educated for that. But it's still hanging around from that pagan culture that's demonic territory in the water. You don't want to drown because people will think you went to hell. Jesus says, here's the deal. If you want to change the world, if you want to sign up for what I'm doing, I would like you to be identified by one sign. Not a tattoo, not cutting your thumb and putting them together. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to be lowered down into enemy territory. We're going to raise you right back up. Because, you see, the enemy cannot hurt you anymore. I'm going to assume, Pastor, you've never lost anybody here in baptism, have you? So far as we know, it's safe. It's just symbolic. No, you expect when you're baptized, it's just symbolism. But listen to the symbolism. I am being lowered down into demonic territory because, devil, because this enemy of mine, I didn't sign up as if there's nothing wrong with third graders in VBS, but there's so many adults who, confessing Christ, but there's so many adults who think baptism is just something that children do. Or maybe teenagers, but now I'm all grown up, and I didn't go down that route, and I'm okay. Listen, let me tell you something. You want to follow Jesus? Baptism is a declaration of war against your enemy. Why would you not want to be lowered down into enemy territory, to come up with your fist shaking in his face, said, I have come to tell you I'm not afraid of you anymore. And you're done for. Not because of what I've done, but because of what Jesus done. But I just want you to know, I just signed up with him. Have you ever been baptized? You ever let the world know that's where you stand? Be careful. Because if you sign up, if you hear the invitation from Jesus to follow, it is indeed an invitation. But if you sign up, it's no longer an invitation. And he may tell you to do something, to go somewhere that's very, very frightening. It's kind of like joining a branch of the military service. They have these wonderful offices in malls. It's all air conditioned and everything. Everybody's dressed. They're in their dress blues or dress grays, whatever, and they challenge you. They got brochures for you. It's an invitation. You want to sign up with the Marines? You want to sign up? It's an invitation. Come join us, join us, join us. Well, if you ever sign that dotted line and they invite you to go to Paris Island, I want to tell you something. It's not really an invitation. And what they do after that will also surprise you. But from this point on, it will never be an invitation because you signed up. Jesus is Lord, and he has a right to send us where he wants us to go. But if that frightens you, can you listen to the cry from 2,000 years ago? Chill out. The gates of Hades cannot prevail against you. Just follow me. Let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you for the insight that the land has for us. I thank you that we live in an age when we can see by either going to Israel or even with all this technology around us. For the first time ever, you've given us an opportunity en masse to see the land of the Bible. Now, Lord, I don't know exactly why you've done this for us, but perhaps it's because our culture more and more doesn't want to believe anything we're talking about, laughs at us for even coming to church. But God, I thank you that it's real. And I thank you that you're still changing lives. And God, we invite you, as we did at the very beginning of this service today, we invite you to change lives even now. All of us. We love you. We worship you. We declare that you and you alone are Lord. We pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I want to just share something with you before we stand and sing our closing song. He made a comment at the beginning of his message that said, don't let fear determine what you do with your future. Don't let fear restrict the decisions you make. The closing song we're going to sing is Lord, I Need You. But a constant reminder that God is right there with me every step of the way should eliminate that fear, right? We look at a task ahead. We look at what's happening to our culture. We look at our surroundings and we see that everything is going down the tubes. Brother Andy said that our culture is in desperate need of a change. And we're the change agents because we're here with the gospel of Jesus Christ. But we look at all of those things and it makes us afraid. And sometimes that fear prevents us from engaging and from stepping out and from taking the gospel into areas where we are afraid of what we might be met with. But be reminded today that Christ is the one who called you to go. And he has gone before you and will go with you. And you don't have to be afraid because even a place like the gates of Hades cannot prevail against what I've called you to do. The gospel that you hold and the gospel that you carry to this culture, the gates of Hades cannot prevail against that gospel. So will you be bold and go where God has commanded you to go? The whole time we proclaim, Lord, I need you to go with me. Lord, I need you to lead me and guide me. But we have to declare, I will follow you, and answer that command. And so I encourage you today, receive encouragement from what he has said, how the Scripture is verifiable. It is absolute truth. And Brother Andy has done a great job with showing us that. But I want to give you 4 ways you can respond today. One is filling out that little card that's a tear off on the bulletin insert. If you didn't get one of those, there's stacks at either door. Tear it off. There's going to be ushers at every door with a bucket. You can drop it in that bucket on your way out. And he committed that you would get pictures of Israel with truths about those locations. Something else you could respond with is in that bucket. Andy has not charged us a dime to come here today for this morning service or tonight. And the way we're going to show him our appreciation to him is with a love offering. So on your way out today, if you enjoyed the presentation he gave, you can put a love offering in that bucket along with your card. A third way you can respond, of course, is taking him up on the trips to Israel. Or he's got some books back there and some different resources that you can go back and talk to him about and purchase or be a part of. And let me tell you guys, if any of you are like me, one of the books has pictures in it. Can I get amen? All right. And then the fourth way you can respond is if you enjoyed what you saw this morning, he's got a completely different presentation tonight at 6 o'clock in this room. I am very excited about what he's sharing tonight. It's very timely with the season that we're in. So I encourage you to come back, but also invite friends and neighbors and family to come with you. So in saying all of that, let's stand and let's remind ourselves today through song how much we need the Lord. Would you do that with us? Let's stand and sing.